Boker Tov, Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov. Today's daf is daf Nun Gimel. In Ksuba says we learn for a Fushlam for Yosef Yisrael ben Chaim Michal and Elazar ben Reuma, and a special Eloi Neshama of Kurt's father, Olav Shalom, Yehuda ben David Simon, and may Kurt have a Arichas Yomim, and may we continue to learn together for many years. So today's daf is daf Nun Gimel. We said we'll start from the bottom of Nun Beis, and Beis will be left off 7.5 years ago in the podcast. The Gemara over there says 7 lines from the bottom of Nun Beis and Beis. The Gemara says, so why don't we say that Bas Bein Habonim, Bas Bein, the last few words on the 7th line from the bottom page, Bas Bein Habonim Nami Tiras. What's all comes? We said Ksuba's been different. Says besides the $200 that the husband has to give to the wife, we encourage the father-in-law to donate money into the marriage. How do we encourage him? By telling him that the male children that this daughter will have, even if the daughter dies in the husband's lifetime, and therefore she doesn't really get the ksuba, but her sons will still get that share of the ksuba. So if this son-in-law takes other wives and they have children besides the regular Yerusha that all his sons will get, these sons from this woman, this daughter of the father-in-law, will get that share of the ksuba independent of the regular Yerusha that he keeps. So why don't we say, why is it only by boys? Why not girls too? The whole idea is we want to encourage the father-in-law to donate money into the marriage, to give a big dowry. So what's the difference if it's boys or girls? Give girls also. Let's say this daughter's only going to have girls. So then they're not going to get the money, right? They're not going to get the money from the father-in-law. So Bas Ben Abanim Nami, just let her get Yerusha. The answer is Kanachla Shavar Abanim. This Ksu has been different. In some aspects, they made it like a Nachla. Nachla means who gets when there's boys and girls? Only the boys get. In some aspects, they made it like a ksuba. So, in other words, they said over here, they called it a nachla. Only boys get it. So, if indeed this woman has 10 daughters, and her father put $1 million into the dowry, they won't get that money. They won't get that money if their father, the son-in-law, eventually dies and leaves sons from other marriages. They won't get that $1 million. That's how it is. They made it like Yerusha. Okay, let's say there's only girls. Let's say this the father-in-law was encouraged to give $1 million, right? And eventually the daughter died after having given birth to many girls. So let's say 2 girls. And then he married other people. He married other women, the son-in-law, and he also just had girls. Well, if there's only girls, who gets the Yerusha? The girls, right? The girls get. So maybe though the girls from this first marriage, right, where the father-in-law gave $1 million, maybe they should get that $1 million before the rest of you should split up. So Bas Ben Abonis Tiras, the Rabbanan didn't make a difference between. They said girls don't get it. It's only Ksuba's been different. Different means boys. Ksuba's been different. We say that in Brich Shmei, that say have we been different up in Rusach, boys. Like by animals, we call a ram different, right? Because that's a male sheep. So, but different means males. So he says no. He says it's only boys, not girls. So Basman says low poly rabban. So if it's like a ksuba, they should be able to get from a talclin too. The $1 million that they're supposed to get that boys supposed to get should come from should get from a talclin just like a ksuba. Ksuba gets from a talclin from not from karka. Shavrabana. I'm sorry. The tigma metalclin. That's a ksuba sharabanim. So I'd let him get metalclin like Yerusha. So I said put the comma in the wrong place. A Yerusha, you get everything, whatever the father left, the assets, whatever his assets are, real estate, movables, anything. So why, if you're saying it's like a ksuba, right, or it's like a Yerusha, you said you made it like Yerusha. The girls don't get, only boys. So it's like Yerusha. So why don't you get metalclin? The answer is ksuba. From giving money. That's right, because he says if it's only on the chance that she's going to have boys that the $1 million will go down to his own flesh and blood. You're right. It discourages them, but it encourages them a little bit, in case there's boys. Right, the odds are maybe it's 50-50, maybe there will be boys. So we're taking metalta. So why can't you get metalta like Yerusha? And it's ksuba sharabanan. The bottom of ksuba doesn't collect from metalta, only from karka. So tikkum shibari. So if that's the case, if it's like a ksuba, you should be able to collect from the chasum shibarim, things that were sold to other people in between. And this is a prior lien from the time of the ksuba. You should be able to collect from shibarim then if it's like a ksuba. The answer is yarsim tan. It's like Yerusha. So the point is that the rabbis call this ksuba different. It's partially like a ksuba, It's like a ksuba that you can only collect from karka, but you can't collect from shabatim. It's like a yerusha. The ema afagav deleka moser dina. What did we say? We mentioned this the other day. This that the boys get to, but let's say there were two fathers-in-law. One guy gave $1 million, one guy gave $2 million, right? And there's a lot of money sitting here now, right? A lot of money at the Yerusha, but the son-in-law didn't make any money on his own. He was a bum. They gave him $1 million and $2 million. He figured, what I have to work, and he left no Yerusha. He had no money at all. He didn't leave any Yerusha other than the $1 million and the $2 million, whatever was left there from the fathers-in-law. There we don't say k'subas ben dichron. It's only if there's Yerusha, if the son-in-law left some money to his children. Why? They malfagat like a moser din. Even if there's no extra din, it's not even $1 that he left over. Because what's going on over it? Minat Torah, whatever money is in the marriage, or whatever money the wife had, goes, if the wife died first, goes to the husband. When the husband dies, it goes to his children. Okay, but let's say he didn't leave any money except for that $1 million and the $2 million that the father's-in-law left. Then the rule is we don't say k'subas ben dichron. Wherever the money is there, goes like a regular rusha. All the boys get it equally, or before if there's a before he gets a double share. But the boys get it, the girls don't get it. All his boys equally. Even if he had 10 different wives, all the boys get it equally. Why is that? Because there's no Yerushim and Torah over here. There's only the money that was given by the fathers-in-law into the k'subas ben dichron. So therefore, he says, then the answer is, if there's no nachal d'oraisa, lo tekin rabbanan. Because over here, what would you say? You'll say, okay, the children from the $1 million nadin, from the $1 million dowry, they get the $1 million, and the children from the $2 million, they get that. And what about other children from another marriage? They get nothing. They get nothing because there's no the oraisa yerusha here of taking the father's assets and distributing it equally among the boys. Well, if that happens, if there's no Yerusha D'Oraisa, we disband the k'subas ben dichron. It doesn't apply. It doesn't apply. So even though that's part of the deal, the $1 million and the $2 million that goes to the grandfather's own children, that's only if there's a regular Yerusha. If there's at least some Yerusha, there's $1 that's going to be split up among the boys. But if there's nothing, we throw it out and we say, no, we go up to the D'Oraisa. If you're going to uproot the whole k'subas D'Oraisa, then the whole thing doesn't apply. Right, like Rav Papa, now a story. 3 lines from the bottom of Nun Beis Miz. Rav Papa Yasik Leilabray. Now, in the previous Gemara, the Gemara said, what's this k'subas ben dichron? This isn't quite right, because minat Torah, when a man dies, his Yerusha goes to his boys, all the boys equally, assuming there's no bechor, right? All the boys get it equally, not girls, boys. If there's no boys, the girls get it equally, right? So now you say, no. If the father-in-law put money into the dowry and the wife died, right? And then the husband died, the husband inherits the wife. But instead of him giving the money equally among the Yerushalayim, we're going to do it differently. We're going to give it to the grandfather's grandfather's own flesh and blood, not the other kids. Okay, some people the Gemara disagree with it. Gemara had a kasha yesterday. Why we're going away against the din Torah. The din Torah is a father dies, all sons get it equally. So okay, well we want to encourage the father-in-law to give money into the marriage. Okay, fine. But some people, like the first idea, didn't like this whole concept. So Rav Papa Asik Le'abrei, he married off his son, Bei Abba Surah, in the house of Abba Surah. Interesting, Rav Papa was married to this Abba Surah's daughter, and must have had another wife because his own son was not a son of that wife. And he read a shidduch for his son to marry his wife's sister. Interesting, you can't marry your aunt, your mother's sister, but this wasn't his mother's sister, this was his stepmother's sister. So he's not really related. So he made a shidduch there. So Rav Papa went to write a ksuba. He went to the father-in-law's house, his own father-in-law, because he was married to one daughter and he was going to have the other daughter of his father-in-law marry his son. So he went to make a ksuba. Shama Yehuda Bar Meir. Yehuda Bar Meir was a big rabbi there, and he heard that Rav Papa was coming. Nothing. He went out. Also, he came. He met him, and he was very happy to meet him. And they walked together to the house of this Abba Sarah. Kimatu Lepis, when he came to the door, Yehuda Bar Meir didn't want to go in because he knew what was going to go. What happened? What was going to happen? They were going to write a ksuba, and this Abba Sarah had some money, right? He probably had some money, and Rav Papa was going to encourage him to donate money into the marriage, right? To give the daughter a dowry. Amalei Neil Mavadois. Rav Papa said to Yehuda, "Come in with me. Why don't you come in with me?" He saw that Yehuda didn't want to go in. He didn't want to have any part of this k'subas ben dichron. where the father-in-law is giving money that will go only to his own grandchildren, not the din Torah. Amalei, my daitach, what are you worried about? Amalei Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, his Talmud, shouldn't a smart kid, lo tavi bavor santa, you shouldn't be around. In other words, don't partake when they move when they transfer a Yerusha, a proper inheritance from one son to another. Even from a bad son to a good son. Sometimes, unfortunately, this happens where a person is not happy with one of his sons, so he writes him out of the will, so to speak, right? Or he gives him much less. Technically, if there's several sons, we have the Gemara of Vasser elsewhere. There's a strong shita, many poskin that way probably, that you could. You can't. You can't. This is the Torah solution. We're not talking about when you give it as a gift before you die. Lamaisa. We're talking about when He says, he has two sons, Reuben and Shimon. He says, I want Shimon to get the Yerusha, I want Reuben to get less or to get none. You shouldn't do that. Now, technically, it works because you could do Yerusha. They're both void to be Yerusha. But he says you shouldn't don't get involved in that. Don't transfer money from one. Give everybody equally. Don't you shouldn't even transfer money and take away a bad son from the Yerusha, like right amount. You don't know what kind of kids are going to come out. Sometimes you have a bad son, but he has good grandchildren, right? But certainly you shouldn't take it away from a son to a daughter. So what he's saying over here is this: think about this. When a man, the father-in-law, is encouraged to give the $1 million, right? But he's not supposed to give money to his daughter. He's supposed to give money to his son. Who's supposed to get his Yerusha? His own sons, right? Not his daughter or his daughter's kids. So that was the objection to the whole idea. So he didn't like it. He says, what's your concern? What's your concern? Because Shmuel said to his son, don't be involved in transferring the Yerusha, writing people out of will, even a bad son to a good son. And certainly from a son to a daughter, you're taking away. This father-in-law was giving the $1 million or the $2 million of the dowry. He was giving money to his daughter instead of giving it to his son. And that's why you object. There's a reason for it. The reason for it is because we want to encourage. In fact, he brings down the pasuk in Yirmiyah, that quotes that as a daraisa. Many times Tanakh is quoted as a daraisa. Yesterday's more Sanami daraisa. It's not really daraisa. It's in Yirmiyah, but that's like a daraisa also. It's part of Tanakh. It says over there, take daughters, take women and have children, and you should take sons for your daughter. How's your daughter supposed to get sons? Not like today when the girls ask the boys out on dates. In those days, it was hard for a girl to get married. The only way was for her father to give a dowry. So there's a reason for it. That's if the man wants to give on his own. If a man wants to give us, our father-in-law wants to give on his own, so we encourage him, right? We're going to force him. Did I tell you to go in and force this man? In other words, where Papa says to Yehuda, did I tell you to go in and force Abba Sarah to give a dowry? My man, go in and don't force him. Just coming in there, if rabbis come in, important people come in there and sit there, that's like forcing. It's like when they come in with all the rabbis, the big guns come for a donation, you sit there, you can't give them a shekel, you got to give something substantial. Just my engine, but he forced him, he convinced him, and he came in. So Yurik came in, Ishtik Yosef, he sat there. Now, when he sat there, didn't say anything. Savar, who thought? Savar Iu, meaning Abba Sarah, the father-in-law, thought Mirsal Karasva. He's like angry at me. He says, okay, do you ever negotiate with somebody? The smart way is keep your mouth shut, and they just keep on increasing the amount, thinking you're upset. He says over here, he said he's angry for not giving. He gave all his assets. He wrote into the ksuba. The father-in-law gave everything over as a dowry. So from like you're not going to talk to me now by your life. I didn't leave anything myself. I gave this. I put everything I have into the dowry. What do you want me now? What are you angry now? If it was up to me, I'm not happy with it. You gave him. I don't encourage this because what you're doing is you're giving money to your daughter instead of to your sons. The Torah says to give it to you. I'm against this whole thing. So should I retract? Should I take the money back? I didn't say to make yourself an Indian giver. Once you committed to it, but I'm not happy with the whole thing. In other words, there were objections to the Psusman differently, but the rabbis did make this like fun. Listen to this. A woman is entitled, let's say, to $200. She knows if her husband divorces her or he dies, she's going to get $200. She said, listen, I need some money now. And I know you support me and I give you my paycheck, but I need more money. I'd like to get $75 now. How about if you give me $75 now and I won't have the ksuba? It's like an option, right? if she dies, he never has to pay it. But if he dies, he has to pay it. So I tell you what, you might save $200, right? And you might not. But for 75, if you give me $75 now, we'll get rid of the ksuba. Right? What about ksuba? What about the $1 million from her father? Is that also batel with this or not? Oh, ksuba is different. Rabbi said, why are you talking about if she sells it? Maybe she just mochel. She says, you know what? I love you. You've been nice to me. Forget the ksuba. You don't have to pay it all. She's mochel the whole thing. Why don't you just ask that question? I'm wondering if she sells it, why is she selling it? Because she needs the $75. She needs to buy a new shaitel. He doesn't want to give her another shaitel. She wants a new shaitel for $75. So she's forced because she needs the money. And so it's like she was forced because she needed the money. It's as if she was beaten 100 times with a whip that has a metal ball at the end. But she was hit 100 times in nachla, and she was forced into it. So Machel said, boy, if when she was forced into it, I'm saying, would she still lose the ksubas bin different? After all, she was forced, she needed the $75. Why should she give up on the ksubas bin? So when she's mochel willingly, so if she gives it up when she's forced, certainly when she's not forced and she gives up her ksubas, certainly I would say that she loses her ksubas bin. In other words, her children won't get that. That's the question. So Rav himself said that the Baruch Machelis, he said, Chitli mocheres ksubas alachem. She sells it to somebody else. Sometimes you could sell it. That's like an option, right? You might exercise it or not. I've said, you what is an option? You buy an option. You put money down. If the price goes down or goes up, you've gained. If the price goes down, you've lost, right? You want to exercise the option. So here, let's say she sells a ksuba. So she has $200 coming to him if her husband divorces her. So I'll tell you what, give me $75. She goes to a friend, a different guy. Give me $75, and you have the ksuba. $7, you might get 200 out of it. You might have a profit of 125. On the other hand, if she dies first, you might get nothing. So he's willing to take the chance. If she sells it to somebody else, she's entitled to ksuba. My time was in 6. She needed the money. She needed the money. Her husband doesn't want to give her the money. She needed the money, and she goes, "I'll sell it to you for $75. You might gain 125. You might not. You might just lose the 75. So she needed the money. So there, she certainly doesn't. She certainly is entitled. Her children are still entitled to ksuba different. But mochel is ksuba lava. But if she just mochel it, ksuba is different. Right? She's not entitled. She was mochel the whole ksuba. My time, she was mochel. If she was mochel, she didn't care about the ksuba at all. That the whole ksuba is gone, including the condition of the ksuba has been different. Boy, Rav mocheres ksuba labala. If she sells the ksuba to her husband, that's the same question that was raised before. If she sells it to her husband for $70, is that like Rav said? If you sell it to somebody else, you're not mochel. The ksuba has been different. But if she sells it to her husband, is that like selling it to somebody else? Or is it like selling, or is it like mochel to her husband? Rav said, if she's mochel to her husband, the whole ksuba, no ksuba is different. If she sells the ksuba to somebody else, she is entitled to it. So if she sells it to her husband, what is that like selling to somebody else and she still gets the ksuba is different? Her kids get that, or is she like mochel the ksuba and then that's nothing. Boss the boy after he asked the question, part of pashti was poshti shalom mocheres ksuba labala mocheres lechem dami. Selling it makes a difference. If she sells it to somebody else or sells it to her own husband, it's like the same thing applies, and the kids still get the ksuba different. Now she needed the money. She needed the money, but if she still wants her kids to get the $1 million or the $2 million dowry that her father put into the marriage. Mesa, how can you say this? You say right? And what? And she doesn't. And the ksuba is still intact. It's this question. We go back to Yavamas. We're throw back to Yavamas. A woman's husband went overseas and didn't show up. One man comes back and says he's dead. What's the rule? The rule is that she can get married because we have a rule that she checks things carefully, and we rely on this. And she got married. Bezdin allowed to get married based on the testimony of one guy and based on the assumption that she's going to check things out carefully. She got remarried. She gets remarried. She has even children from the second marriage. One day, unfortunately, the first husband shows up. So it says over there, what happens now? She has to leave both marriages, right? Because she's like an adulteress. So Mesa, now she dies. Ein Yorshin, she'll say, her Yorshin from her first marriage, the second don't get the ksuba. What kind of ksuba? You already said she's not entitled. She has to leave both marriages. She's not entitled to the ksuba, right? And her Ein Yorshin, she'll say, nobody gets her ksuba at all. So what ksuba are we talking about? Ksuba has been different. the ksubas been different, that her father put into the marriage, the dowry, her sons don't get that either. Why? Just like we said before, when she sold the ksuba for $75 to somebody else, her husband, why did she do that? Because she needed the money, but she didn't want to give up on the ksuba's been different. That condition still remains, right? So over here too, why don't you say that, why did she get remarried? Her husband didn't show up for a couple of years. Somebody said he was dead. She did the best she could. She checked it out. She got remarried because she didn't want to be alone. Woman doesn't want to be alone. She wanted to get remarried. So it's also her yetzer, her inclination to get remarried, that she needed a husband, forced her into it. Why should her kids lose the superstition? It's the hasam knasu. It's a concept that comes from Rabbanan. The rabbis fined her for not checking carefully enough. Obviously, she didn't check carefully enough because her husband did show up. So that was a special case. Yosef Rabban,
we're talking about
the woman
of the first husband,
of the first husband, correct, or the second.
Wouldn't the kids have gotten it immediately before she even married the second?
No, that's not. When the first husband died, supposedly. He never died at the end. At the end, he never died. So the money was in trust, until that. Right? He never died. He never died. Correct. If it was gone because they awarded the ksuba to the that, you're right. But that's again correct. As long as assuming that he died, right? So she would have collected the ksuba from the first husband, and they're going to be kept. But let's say the money was held in trust, or she had to put the money back, because at the end he didn't die. The answer, she had to return the money.
With the assoming of this.
Right.
So-called
right. They'd have to give back the money. Yeah, presumably, yeah, because the whole thing was not there. Right. It was a wrong deal. It's a mekachto, so to speak. Right. All right. Yasser Rav Meir Shapiro Rav Chisda. The company said He said the following in the name of Chisda. Let's say she's Machal Ksuba. Ein la mazonos. Let's say she's Machal Ksuba, and then the husband dies. Normally, what's the deal when a husband dies? We said in the Mishnah, besides the Ksuba's been different, part of the thing is that she's entitled to eat, to get maintained in the house until she gets remarried or until the kids decide to give her the Ksuba. But if she's Machal Ksuba, she's not entitled to mazonos after death. Even though she was a nice girl, she said, I'm Machal Ksuba, I love you, you don't have to pay me the Ksuba. And now he dies, she's not entitled to food. That's what Rav Lazar said. Amalei, so if Chisda said, had you not said it to me in the name of Rav Lazar, right? It's just because Rabin Bar Chanina said this to Rav Chisda in the name of Rav Lazar. I would have told you, look at the pasuk. Pasuk says Mishlei, you're giving me bad in return for good. She was a nice girl and said, you don't have to pay the $200. And now when he dies, she's machal the $200, but she's not even going to get food. The pasuk goes on. Somebody who returns bad for good. Somebody is Reuben is good to Shimon, and Shimon pays him back with bad. He'll always have bad in his house. That's what he said. But it's mashma from here that had you not told me the name of Rav Lazar, that's what I would have said. But Rav Lazar said that she's machal ksuba, she's not entitled to mazon. It's a chlokes among the Rishonim how they pass him. Is she entitled to it or not? Yasser Rav Nachman Ve'ula, Ravim Bar Papi. These rabbis were sitting. Yasser Rav Chia Barami Gavai was sitting there. Also, a man came. The shchibir man's betrothed wife wasn't fully married, died. Amrle, they said, zil cover, bury her. Kvar. Havlik, or give her the ksuba. In other words, the assumption was that if she had a ksuba from the Shas Erison, either because he gave it to her, because there was a place where the Rabbanu were metakan ksuba from Erison, he has to he has to pay the $200 if he dies or divorced. He also is required to bury her. Amalu Rav Chia Taninu. We learned Ishtar Arusa. If a man's wife, not a full wife, Arusa, lo onav matamila. If she dies, right, he's not an onain, meaning an onain can't eat kachim. He's not an onain for her because she's not really his wife. Lo matamila. If he's a kohen, he wouldn't become tummy to her. He wouldn't go to the funeral. She's not an onain. She doesn't. A woman's not really a woman. Is not prohibited from becoming tummy, but she doesn't have to be. Mesa. If she dies, Eini Yorsha. If she dies, he's not Yorush. Her husband only inherits his wife, is fully his wife, not Arusa. Mesu, if he dies, go with Ksubasa, because we're talking about a case where either he wrote the Ksuba or the Takana, that place was that the woman get a Ksuba from Erison. Time in the Mesu, if he died, Mesa, he and Ksuba, she's not entitled to Ksuba. So why does he have to bury her? She's not entitled to anything if she dies. If she dies, she's not entitled to Ksuba. If she dies and it was his full wife, then he's an Onain. And if he's a Kohen, he's a Matami to her. But if she dies, he doesn't owe her anything. Ein l'ksuba, hamesi ein l'ksuba. My time Ravosha, Shani Karaba, Hoshi explained. It doesn't fit into the words. When did she get the ksuba? It says in the ksuba, when you get married to somebody else, right? Then you'll be entitled to get what's written in here. Meaning, when you leave the marriage, when you get married to somebody else, you'll get the ksuba, or when the kids pay you off, you'll get the ksuba. But it's only when you get only at that point. And like Rashi says, last line on the page, when is she entitled to the $200? When her husband dies or divorces her. Well, in this case, she died, and she wasn't married to him. If she would die and she had money, he would get it. But there's nothing, he's not entitled. He doesn't get anything, and therefore he's also not meshubah to bury her. So therefore, he disagreed with this idea. He says, you should go bury her. I'm not to bury her. Now, Rav Hoshia said that in Babel, Kiyasa Rav came from Eretz Yisrael, Amar Shlakish, he said in the name of Shlakish, Arusa Shemesa ain't l'ksuba, she's not l'ksuba, Amala Abaya, and she's not entitled to the ksuba, and he doesn't have to bury her. The ksuba presumably also includes burying her, taking care of her needs. Amala Abaya, so Abaya said to them, oh, now you're telling us, Zilu Amrle, go tell Shkil, tell us, take your good thing. You gave us this member that if she dies, he doesn't have to bury her. Shadiach, we put it on the thorns. In other words, we didn't need you to come from Eretz Yisrael to say in the name of Rish Lakish that if your wife, that a wife of a Rusa who dies, she doesn't have to the ksuba and he doesn't have to bury her. Rav Hoshia already explained it, like we just said in Babel. But in we said also the female daughters that are in you remember the male sons. What do they get? They get the ksuba's been different, the $1 million, the $2 million dowry. The girls are entitled to eat in the house until they get married. So Rav Tani ad to talk to them until they get married. Levi Amar ad to Tifker until they become Bulgarians. Remember, we've learned many times. Once a girl turns 12 and a half, right? Or if she gets married, she's out of her father's shus. That doesn't break her nidarim. He's not entitled to marry off, etc. So Rav says and learns in the Mishnah that how long do the girls get maintenance in the house? They're fed until they're remember. While the father is alive, he doesn't have to feed them. It's a mitzvah. From the age of 6 till 12, it's a mitzvah to feed them. He doesn't have to. Once he dies, let's say he dies, they're 8 years old. They have to be fed. Until when? So Rav says until they get married. Levi says until they become 12 and a half. So the Rav, Afagab the bug, what do you according to Rav, even though they turn 12 and a half, he still has to feed them if they're not married. And according to Levi, he says Afagab then said even though they got married, he still has to feed them, even though they're not 12 and a half yet. Obviously, if they're fully married or if they're 12 and a half, he doesn't have to feed them anymore. They're not part of the family anymore. If she turned 12 and a half, or if she got married, everybody agrees. They don't get food anymore. Here's the machlokas. If she got engaged below bugger, and she's not 12. Let's say she got engaged at 8 years old. Right? She's engaged. She's 12 years old. She's 8 years old. They married her. The father died, and does he have to feed her? In other words, Rav who says until they get married, he means not married, fully married. Even Arusa also, she's not fed anymore. Levi says no. Levi says Arusa still gets fed. Right? Levi, Rashi explains that he was Messiah in Mishnayos, like Levi says, what he said, Levi. The Levi Sira Brisa, she should start he was Masandra of the Brises. Masnisi, he said, until they get 12 and a half. The Yamtas men this and their time has come to get married, meaning 12 months after they got engaged. Tarti, you need both. You don't need 12 and a half. And then Ella, Tabagan, O Tabagan, or either they're 12 and a half, O Yamtas men, or their Nisuin has come, meaning 12 months after the Erison where the husband has to marry her. So it means either when they're married, according to Levi, either 12 and a half or marriage. According to Rav, it's either 12 and a half or even getting engaged. Until when is a daughter fed after her father died? Until she gets engaged. That would be like Rav. That was the Tanakam here. Rav Lazar said until she's 12 and a half. Until she's 12 and a half. Okay, meaning or married. Everybody agrees if she's fully married. So Rav will go like the Tanakama, and Levi will go like Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yosef, he says until they get married. So Ibola, what do you mean Havayin? Havayin means like marriage. It could mean both. Ibola Havayin Da'irison Havayin does it mean marriage only betrothal, or does it mean fully married? Take that question stands from Rabbi Yosef. But we had a machlokas between Rav and Levi, and the Tanakama and Rav Lazar. Have you heard from Rav Yehuda anything about this? Arusa Yeshlam Zos or Einlam Zos? This very question. And Arusa, who's a Yasoma, her father died. You heard anything about that? Tosa says over here that he didn't hear we just said it's machlokas between Rav Lazar and Tanakama, between Rav and Levi. Either he didn't hear the machlokas, or his question is, did you hear what the psak is? Amalei, I didn't hear the halacha. I didn't hear from Rav Yehuda if he paskin about this question. And Arusa, who's again, according to Rav, and Arusa stops getting mizonos. According to Levi, she gets mizonos until she gets married, or until she turns, everybody agrees if she turns 12 and a half, she stops getting mizonos. But an Arusa who's not 12 and a half, does she get out? So he says, I haven't heard, I didn't hear a psak from Rav Yehuda, but misfara less, I would assume she doesn't get any more. Why? Keeping the irsa lo nechlet titzel. What's the reason why we say that a young girl, 8 years old, she gets mizonos after her father died? Because we don't want her to go begging. It's degrading for a little girl. She can't get food. But over here, keeping the irsa lo nechlet. But once she has a fiance, the fiance is not going to let her, even though he's not mechuyev to feed her. But if she has no food, he's not going to let her be destitute, and he'll feed her. So therefore, probably she shouldn't get food anymore, like Rav, and like we said in the Tanakama, right? The Tanakama in the Brisa, and according to Rav, once she's engaged, she shouldn't get food anymore from the father's estate. Amalei, if you haven't heard the halacha, I can tell you the other way around. Islam, we tell you she should get food. Why would the fiance feed her? He doesn't know if he's going to really marry her or not. They got engaged. Maybe he's going to hear some other bad rumors, or he's going to find that she's got a blemish that he's not happy. The marriage may not complete. So he's not going to throw his money out for another. In other words, a man's not going to feed his fiance until he gets married to her. I could use that svara too. Some say the other way around. He asked him, have you heard anything from Yehud about the halacha? Of Chisda said to Rav Yosef, I haven't heard the halacha. Misfara Isla, but I would tell you from Svara, she is entitled to it. Why? Why? Since the husband doesn't know for sure the fiance if he's actually going to marry her, he's going to get he's not going to put his money there. Therefore, she should be entitled to get sustenance from her father's estate because she's a yisoma. And even though she's engaged, that doesn't mean anything. So he answered him back. So Chris said, yeah, I could tell you the other way around. If you haven't heard the halacha specifically, as far or less, I would tell us as far as she's not entitled to it. Keeping the year. So once he got engaged to her, once his fiance, so the fiance doesn't want her to become destitute. So you could see it both ways. So he didn't hear from Yehuda Psak, but as we said, it's a machlokas whether this girl who's 8 years old, 9 years old, her father died, and she's engaged. If her father died, she's not 12 and a half yet, and she's not even engaged. Everybody agrees she's entitled to mazonos. If she's 12 and a half, everybody agrees she's not entitled. If she's fully married, everybody agrees she's not entitled. If she's only an arusa, is she entitled or not? Rav says not, and the Tanakama says not, and the others say yes, she is entitled to it. Listen to this question. Here's a good one. What's a mamenas? A girl who was married, her father died, or had married off once before, and she was divorced from that marriage. She's 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and her brothers or her mother marries her off. It's a Kedushin Rabbanan. Remember, we've learned many times in Yavamas that she can walk away from that marriage at 12 years old, right? When she's 12, she can walk away. If it's not consummated after 12 years old, she can walk away. Now, when she walks away, she goes back to her father's house, right? To her father's house with her brothers and the mother. Does she get mizonos now? Well, she's married, and when she's married, but she's not, remember the marriage is broken off. It's like it never was there. She doesn't even need a get. She just walks away. It's like there was no marriage. Is she in Talmud? Amalu, Amav Sheshes. We said we have a brisa. Brisa like this. Amana v'veisavia. Let's say she's an amana from the Erison, of course. Once she's fully married or she's a vulgar, she never gets from her father. She's out of her father's estate totally. But Amana, let's say she's an Amana Mena Erison. She was engaged and the fiance died. Or Grusha Beisavia, or she was divorced from Erison and she's back in her father's house. Or Shemeres Yavam Beisavia. Her husband had died, and husband meaning her fiance had died. And she's Shemeres Yavam, meaning she never consummated any marriage yet. She's back in her father's house. She was engaged and her husband died, and she has to fall Yibam now to the brother, even though it was only Erison. There's still Shemeres Yavam there. Yeshlam Tanakh says she's entitled to Mazonos. Presumably also Mamenas, she's back in the father's house. If these people have Mazonos, right, they were engaged, they're back in the father's house. If she's still in her father's house, meaning she never left, she was never engaged, never betrothed, nothing, then Yesh Mazonos. Ain't a Beisavia. Once she left her father's house, even just it was a betrothal, if her husband then died, if fiance died or divorced her, or died and left a brother. Elam Shantal to Mazonos. So Tanakam. What's between Yehuda and Tanakam? Yehuda says if she's in the father's house, she's entitled. Not in the father's house, she's not. What's between that and the Tanakama? Allah Menasik Menai. Here's the Machlokas. Tanakama Sabra Isla. She's entitled, right? Almana Beisavia, Grusha Beisavia, Shemesh also. Rabbi Yehuda Sabra Lesla. Rabbi Yehuda says no, that she's not entitled to it. Because Rabbi Yehuda says what? Rabbi Yehuda says that if she's still in her father's house now, right? Now she's in her father's house because she's back there. Then she's in the outer base of Via Yeshim Zonas, ain't a base of Via, ain't a Zonas. So Elav Manasikimanat, Tanakama Sabra Isla. Tanakama says just like a Almana or a Gusha or Shemer Siyavim back in her father's house is entitled to. Rabbi Yehuda Sabra is not entitled to it. So it's a machlokas whether a manas is considered back in her father's house, or do you say it's like if it was like no marriage at all, and therefore she's still in her father's house. It's a machlokas about the case. Bas Yavama, Yeshim Zonas. Remember, 2 feet. What's the ksuba? The ksuba says that if I die or divorce you, the girls, not only is the ksuba, it's been different. Not only you tell it to the house, but also the daughters will be fed in my house, right? What about if this man dies and he left a brother? There were no children. So what happens? The brother marries her, right? He's the Yavam, marries her, and the Yavam has a daughter. Remember, what ksuba is there with the Yavam? The Yavam, so to speak, assumes the ksuba of the first husband. Well, the first husband promised that his children, his daughters will be fed. But the second husband didn't promise, the Yavam didn't promise that. So Bas Yavama, Yeshim Zon Senimzos, Kivin Amar Maksibas on Nefse Balarishan, since the Ksuba comes from Balarishan, Lesla, right? Because the Balarishan didn't promise to feed the daughters of his brother, who's going to take over later on. Oh, Dilma Kivin, the Elesla, Marishan, if there is no Ksuba from the first husband who died and left the brother, the Yavam, to marry her, if he didn't have any estate, he had no money. To kill the Rabbanim Mishani, the Rabbanim said that the second husband, the Yavam, should supply Islam, maybe the daughter is also entitled to. This question stands. All right, we'll pick it up here tomorrow. Mitzvah Shem, boy, Rav Blesser. Have a good day. Chodesh Tov, Shavua Tov.